Okay, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. I am Carol White, the CEO of the New Mexico Restaurant Association, and I have with me Terry Linton. Terry formed Linton Associates in 1988 after working for a local brokerage firm. His desire was to serve clients with respect and attention, no matter the size of their business. Terry, as a business owner, understands the challenges facing his clients. He lives by the company motto, the service you deserve, the professionalism you expect, in every aspect of his personal and professional life. Terry and members of his staff belong to and hold board positions in a variety of nonprofit and professional organizations. And I would just like to say I've known Terry for many years, and I'm thrilled that he is our partner at the New Mexico Restaurant Association for this very important subject, which is healthcare. Terry was there before the Affordable Health Care Act, and he'll be there after the Affordable Health Care Act. But I consider Terry one of the foremost authorities in New Mexico on the Affordable Care Act. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Carol. And as you mentioned, I was there before, and I'll be here after. I don't know if there will be an after the Affordable Care Act, but we'll talk about that as discussion happens.
All right. So if you have questions, we are going to hold questions until the very end of the webinar. And Terry will answer those. If we don't get to some of your questions, just type them in the chat box as we're going along as you think of them. But again, we will not stop in the middle of this. We'll just keep going. So Terry, take it away.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, we're going to go through a bunch of slides, but the first one is a glossary. And these are terms that I use all the time and our industry uses all the time. And this is just for your reference, but I would like you to look at the bottom left that says MVP, or Minimum Value Plan. We're going to talk a little bit about this. What I have seen is the hospitality and the restaurant industry has used these plans in the past, and they have been ruled beginning January 1st of 16 not good. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more. But this is a list of the glossary, and you'll have this in your slides for reference later on. A lot of people are asking me, what about the Supreme Court decision the end of June? In February and March, the Supreme Court heard a appeal about if it was called King versus Burrell, and it was a lawsuit that challenged the subsidies that the states are allowing for individuals on the exchange. And they heard the arguments, and actually they heard about 3 times the amount of time that they usually hear arguments, because they thought this was so important. So usually there's about an hour and a half worth of arguments, pro and con on a certain subject, and they allowed this to go on for 3 or 4 hours. So my gut reaction is that the Supreme Court will keep the ACA in compliance. My goal today is to talk to you about facts, not about my personal preferences or personal ideas, but I do think that the Supreme Court will keep the Affordable Care Act in effect with their ruling at the end of June. A couple things to review is what are some things that are relevant to ACA. In 2015, we're in right now, our out-of-pocket maximum for an individual is $6,600, and for a family it's $13,200. What is new the last couple of years is that $6,600 includes all copays, all deductibles, and all coinsurance. So the most anybody could be out of pocket for a year would be $6,600 for covered benefits. We have been in the no pre-existing condition limitation for 2 years now. That means that if I don't have insurance and I apply for insurance, they cannot deny me coverage, and they can't deny me coverage because I had a heart attack or I'm a diabetic or whatever. So a person, I'm 63 years old, so a 63-year-old marathon runner is going to be the same rate as a 63-year-old diabetic that is a very heavy person. So health conditions are not a deciding factor anymore. Gender is not a deciding factor anymore. Preventive care must be covered 100%. So that means that for all of our preventive care, we can go into the doctor's office and it's a $0 copay. Primary care and specialists are still copays, but preventive care is not. There are no lifetime maximums on anything on our plans anymore. In the old days, we used to have a lifetime maximum for mental and nervous or for substance abuse, etc., but there's no limitations anymore. One thing that's very important for our restaurant industry is standalone HRAs, or health reimbursement accounts, are gone. So what a lot of restaurants were doing, a lot of our employers were doing, was they were paying for individual plans for their employees and using that as a tax write-off and not as a expense to the employee. So now the government has said you have to show that as income. If you're going to pay for an individual's insurance, an individual plan, it has to be shown as income for that individual, which is different in the group, because when we have a group plan, the employees don't show that as income. A cautionary note for those of you that have plans now, a lot of our plans used to be first of the month after 90 days. So if I was employed, then I would have to go through 90 days of employment and then I'd be covered the next month. Beginning in 2014, the maximum period is 90 days. So all of our groups, we've advised to do the maximum of first of the month after 60 days. So that could make a difference. Maybe some of you might have first of the month after 6 months or after a year. That is, you cannot do that anymore. It has to be first of the month after 60 days. You may also not have different classes. So you can't have your owners being paid at 100% of their premiums and your rank and file, your service staff at 50%. Everybody has to be treated equally now. I don't know if I'm talking to anybody that has more than 50 employees, but beginning in 2015, this year, if you have over 100 employees this year, and in 2016, if you have over 50 employees, you have to offer health insurance to your employees, and you can't be discriminatory. So everybody is treated equally, and the most an employee can spend, the most an employee can be charged is 9.5% of their income. And it has to be a minimal essential coverage. And we'll go through that. And a minimal essential coverage is a bronze plan. So all the coverages that the carriers have offered us have minimal essential coverage. But please be aware that you can charge only 9.5% of somebody's income before, so you won't be fined. What a lot of my talk today is on the Section 6055 and 6056, and that begins this year, 2015. We have to acquire data for that, and we have to report to the government in late January, early February of 2016. So people ask about forms for 6055 and 6056. 6055 and 6056 are only the laws. Our forms are the 1094s and the 1095s, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next year in 2016, small group is determined to be 100, below 100. Right now, small group is determined below 50, but the small group will increase to 100 lives beginning January 1st of 2016. Here's what we need to collect in data for 2015 to be reported in the end of January in 2016. So we need to make sure that we offer benefits. Now, this is only for what we call ALEs, or applicable large employees. That's over 50 lives. So if you all are restaurant owners that have less than 50 lives, you are not, should not worry about this reporting because the carriers are going to do it for you. But you need to track, if you're over 50 employees or around 50 employees, you need to track and how many full-time equivalent employees you have. So full-time is determined at 30 hours. Full-time is not 40 hours. Full-time for ACA is 30 hours. So you need to look and see how many 30-hour employees you have. And if you're over 50, then it's applicable. If you're under 50, it's not. Now, if you have, let's say, 40 full-time equivalents, full-time employees, and then you have 20 that work 15 hours a week, that would get you over the 50. So you add all of your part-time employees, the hours that they work during a month, and then you divide and make sure that you have over 50 or under 50 employees. So that's really crucial as we go through this reporting factor. So one of the big bullets on that slide, if your employee count is hovering around 50 full-time employees and 50 full-time equivalents, you need to monitor your count monthly. If you're under 50, you don't need to worry about that, but if you're over 50, you do. The reason is because if you have over 50 employees and you do not offer a plan, then you're going to be fined. You're going to be penalized by the federal government big time. So it's important to know where you're at as you go through this year. Okay, so what we're talking on the next slide here talks about what type of group we are. And look on your left side. So we've got self-funded, applicable large employees, fully insured large employees, self-funded small group, and fully insured small group. Now, New Mexico is a small group, small employer state. Most of our business is in the 5 to 20 employees. So if whoever's listening to this webinar, if you're under 50 employees, the carrier is going to issue all of this stuff to the federal government, all of these reports. So you don't need to worry about it. So the Presbyterians or the Blue Crosses or the United Healthcares, the New Mexico Health Connection, they're the ones that are going to be reporting this to you. If you're self-funded or if you're a large group, then you need to collect this data and report to the IRS. Okay, so what you need, if you're a large employer, what you need to do in 2015 to get ready for the reports that are due in early 2016, you need to collect and document data. So you need to, as the slide says, you need to show who you're offering coverage to, names, social security numbers, addresses of employees under the plan, number of full-time employees for each month, share of full-time employees' monthly premiums that are going into the premium. This is on a month-to-month basis. And what I've been telling my groups is please start doing this now so you don't have to do it on January 15th and go back a full year. You'll go crazy if you do that. So be prepared, be proactive, and start doing this now. So you need to determine and document how you count your employees. And that's the only reason you do that is in case you get audited by the IRS. And just to let you know, the IRS and the Department of Labor have added 2,000 more auditors into our system. And some sources have told me that within the next 5 years, most of our businesses, including yours and mine, will be audited. So be careful on that. So, and then you also need to figure out how you're going to deliver the required forms both to the IRS and to your employees. Okay, so to give you an idea of, again, the small employer from 1 to 49, the carrier is going to take care of this reporting, so you don't need to worry about it. You need to make sure if you're in that no man's land at from 45 to 55, you need to be exact to find out if you're an ALE, applicable large employer, or not. There's new forms. There's the 1055B and the 1095B and the 1095C, and you're going to need to know how to populate those forms. A lot of payroll companies are doing this for our employers, so you might ask your payroll company, if you have an outside vendor, if they're doing that for you. You know, the paydays, the paychecks, those kind of vendors, the Infinisources, etc. So you need to also figure out how you're going to get these forms to your employees, whether you're going to do it or a W-2 vendor or what. And then you need to find out if the carrier or you need to get these forms to the IRS by the end of February 2016. And then the last three bullets are talking about if you're a fully insured or self-funded, or if you're large or small, and we've gone through that already. How will the IRS know who has insurance? Why are we doing all these forms? Well, the IRS wants to know who has insurance, and if you, as individuals, and if you don't have insurance, you're going to get fined. Also, the IRS wants to know if you're a large employer, if you are offering a good plan at an affordable rate. So that's what all these forms are for. We knew this reporting was going to be a major part of the law back when the law was formed 4 or 5 years ago, and it is going to be a hassle for the employers. There is no question that it's a hassle factor for our employers. What do you need to do when you're filling out your form? Well, you need to get information. So you need to show the federal government the type of coverage you offer, who you cover it to, and what the period of coverage is. You also need to make sure that you give this report to all of your employees that are over age 18. So it's very comprehensive. The payroll companies have done a pretty good job of getting this information out. But again, if you're under 50, the insurance company is going to do it. If you're over 50, then you need to worry about this. And this is a slide that you can refer to on how you count your employees. And we went through this a little bit earlier, but any employee that's over 30 hours is full-time. So that's one employee. If we have 2 employees that are working 15 hours, 2 times 15 is 30. That's one employee, one full-time equivalence. So that's how you track your number of employees to let IRS and you know if you're a large employer or not. So use this slide as a reference point when you need to track if you're a large employer or not. Okay, the health insurance, both fully insured and self-funded, we need, as I said, we need to have a minimal essential coverage. And that is like a bronze plan or a silver plan. And all of the carriers in the state of New Mexico, all of their plans are determined minimal essential coverage. It also has to be affordable to our employees. And what that means is that an employee's cost cannot be more than 9.5% of their paycheck. And then also they need to satisfy the minimal value requirement, which means that 60% of the plan's benefits are allowed. So, but again, all our carriers already have that in effect. We have to offer health insurance to all of our employees and their children up to age 26. The purpose of the reporting for Section 6056 and 6056 is what I've said, is it helps the IRS administer the employer and the individual shared responsibility rules. The employee is responsible. All Americans are responsible to have health insurance, whether through individual or through a group or through Medicaid or Medicare or some other avenues. But every American is going to need to prove where they get their insurance or they're going to be fined, as is every employer that has over 50 employees needs to let the federal government know that they have a minimal essential coverage and it's affordable. And if not, they're going to be fined. So Section 6056 is an IRS code, and because of that, there's some forms that we need to worry about, the 1094B and the 1095B. So there are draft instructions available on the IRS website for you to figure out how to work on those. If you can't get those, you can get through to Carol or Dion at the Restaurant Association, and I will give them the instructions for the forms to help you guys out. They're probably 40 to 50 pages, so I've got those in electronic form that we can send those to you if you would like. Just let Carol or Dion know that. So what needs to be on the 6055 or on the 1094, 1095? You need to have the provider's name, Presbyterian or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and their EIN number, the individual responsibles, the individual insured's name, address, and Social Security number, the employer's name and tax identification number, etc. So that's what needs to be part of the things that you need to accrue this next few months so you can report that in January, February next year. The 6056 is returns, and those are transmittals that the 1094C and the 1095C, those are transmittals that the employer has to give the federal government or their employees on what the coverage is. So this is, again, a double check for the IRS to know that the employer and the employee has coverage. So, so all applicable large employers, remember over 50 lives, they need to let the government know that they've offered health insurance to all employees working over 30 hours a week and that it's affordable. And if you don't, you're going to be fined. So you need to make sure that you offer this coverage and it's affordable. So the 6056 forms that needs to be filled out, you can see just right on the slide. But the employer, you're the employer, the contact person telephone number, the calendar year for what the report's doing, whether MEC minimum essential coverage was offered. So you have to offer good coverage, and then what the employees share, that's the 9.5%, the number of full-time employees, and the name, address, and Social Security number of all the full-time employees, and the months that they were covered under the plan. So that's where you have to go month by month. You have to do a report month by month. Now, if I was covered under your plan for all 12 months, there's a little box that says all 12 months. But if I was only there for 9 months, then you've got to say that I was there from April through December. So it's going to be a little bit reporting challenge for all of our employers. So the medium-sized ALEs from 50 to 100 have a year dispensation from this rule. So they don't start until 2016. So a lot of our employers that are 50 to 100 have a little sigh of relief that they don't have to do this for another year. Okay, options for employees. Remember in one of the earlier slides, I talked about reimbursement of individual premiums are not permitted. So a ruling came out about November 15th last year saying that you may not reimburse employees for individual plans unless you show it on their W-2 as income. So the HRAs, the health reimbursement accounts that a lot of clients, a lot of restaurants and clients did, those are not allowed beginning January 1st of 2015. And a little side note, at the very bottom, ACA violations can result in excise taxes of $3,600 per year per violation. and that is not a deductible expense. That's a penalty, and it's not deductible, and hopefully we don't have to talk about that anymore. What we're seeing in that very first slide, I told you to look at minimum value plans, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Last year, there was minimum value plans sold in the hospitality industry and in the restaurant industry to the lower income people. In the hospitality industry to the house cleaners, housekeepers, and in the restaurant industry to the back office staff. Those were sold, but an interpretation happened in early December, said those that were sold are good for another year, but you cannot sell any more of those, or you cannot have those plans. So if you have a minimum value plan, you need to do something else for 2016 because they're not going to be grandfathered in anymore after this year. So if that pertains to you, you're going to need to do something about it. If it doesn't pertain to you, then that's fine. What we see a solution that a lot of employers are doing is they're offering dual choice. They're offering a base plan with employees having an option to buy up. So they have a base plan, let's say a bronze plan, maybe a $3,000 deductible, 50-50 plan till out-of-pocket expenses of $6,600. And that's a less expensive plan that they offer all their employees. And they make sure that the most an employee can be charged is 9.5% of their W-2 income. And then they offer a second plan that's a better plan. So we have a base plan and then a buy-up plan. So we might have the base plan as a bronze or silver, and we have a buy-up as a gold plan, allowing a better set of benefits for employees to choose. Now that difference will be they'll take that out of their salary in a salary deferral. But I bet we have 30 or 40% of our clients, and even becoming more, they're doing this dual option plan that allows a base and a buy-up. So think of that as a way to perhaps not get around ACA, but to follow the guidelines of ACA, but still offer benefits, stronger benefits to other employees. Now, you cannot discriminate. You cannot say, here's my plan, but manager, floor manager, or whoever you want, you get this other plan and we'll pay for it. You cannot do that. So it has to be employee deduction or salary deduction. Now, if you want to increase their salary, those preferred people, increase their salary to allow them to do that, that's fine, because the government's okay with that because they're getting more state and more FICA and more federal taxes. So they're fine with that. So a lot of these laws have to do with revenue generation by the IRS. So think about the dual choice. A lot of our employers are doing that. Here's a checklist for employers. We've talked a lot about a lot of information in this last half hour or so, but understand the counting methods. Know how to determine if you're a large employer or a small employer. Know if your plan that you have is a good plan, is affordable because of the employer mandate. Calculate your number of full-time and full-time equivalent employees. That's very important. Remember, you only need one plan that meets the coverage guidelines. Another plan could be richer or leaner. What we see is a base plan, then a buy-up plan. So those are things that you need to consider as you're making decisions for this year and next year. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit now about variable hour employees. I've got a feeling that restaurants, because of seasonal employees or variable hour employees, this is important. To give you a good idea, one of our accounts is the Albuquerque Isotopes Baseball Club. So they have about 20 full-time employees that work 12 months a year, but they also have 400 part-time employees. And the question was, the general manager asked me that they only work for those 4 or 5 months. He asked me, do we need to cover these people? Well, as you go through the calculations for a seasonal employee, we determined that no, those 400 seasonal employees were not having to be covered. And this might be pertinent to you all too in the restaurant business because of catering business in November and December, or weddings in May and June. So you need to be familiar with these terms that we're going to go over: initial measurement period, standard measurement period, variable hour employer, standard employee, etc. To start this off, if you have an employee and you know that they're going to be 30 hours a week, you need to offer them coverage. The variable hour is for the person that is under 30 hours that might go over 30 hours. So be very careful on that. So there's an initial measurement period for the variable hour employee. Again, not the full-time person that you've got on staff for 40 hours a week, but this is for the variable hour, and you have to do an initial measurement period, and we recommend that the initial measurement period is for a year. So if you've got somebody on staff that you come and go, depending on catering events, special activities, or whatever, you need to keep big time tracking of their hours, and that's the variable hour employee. And what you need to do is you initially measure them for a year. So you do not need to cover them or offer coverage for a year. And then the standard measurement period is for your existing employees. So you need to look at them too, not just your new hires, but your whole staff. So if you've got existing employees that are variable employees, you need to chart them also. The stability period is the period after the initial measurement period where you offer coverage. So if you find a variable employee has worked 30 hours a week for most of the year, then you need to offer them coverage for the next year. And that's the stability period. And that is the same amount of time as our measurement period. So we have a measurement period where we determine if somebody is full-time equivalent or not, and then we have to offer them coverage for that stability period. There's an administrative period. So let's just look on a calendar year from January through January. You hire me on December 18th, and so my measurement period is January 1st through December 31st. So we determine that I'm a full-time employee, that I've worked over 30 hours a week. Then there's an administrative period that can be no longer than 90 days, but I recommend it's the same as your probationary period for your new hires for your regular full-time employees. So that's the administrative period. And then after that is when that stability period starts, and that's where you need to offer them for the next 12 months coverage. And then we start the ball game all over again. Everybody is in a measurement period or stability period all the time. All are variable hour people. Our full-time people are full-time, and they should be offered coverage. So there's the definition of variable hour employee, but I basically told you what that was. Our seasonal employee, that's like the Albuquerque Isotopes or the swimming pools in the city, or the Forest Service that might hire summer people. That's the definition of seasonal employees. So you need to worry about the seasonal employees too, and that's what the Isotopes did. And they figured out that through this determination, they did not need to offer the coverage for those 400 individuals for that 5-month period. So here's a chart, talks about the 12-month standard measurement period, and then in the green is the administrative period, and then the blue is the stability period where you actually have to offer the coverage. The 12-month standard measurement period, that's for our existing employees. So you still need to do that for existing employees and new hires. Again, this is only for variable employees. If we have somebody working 40 hours a week, they're going to be covered. So we're talking about new hires and people that are still has been with us for years, let's say, but still they could be variable employees. So we still need to measure them. The caution that I give you, if you don't do this and you're determined that you're an ALE over 50, a large 50 equivalent full-time equivalents, and you don't offer coverage to them, and they go to the exchange and get a subsidy, then you're going to be fined big time. So that's why you need to measure this. It's not, I might or I might not. This is going to protect you and if they're over 30 hours, then you need to offer them coverage. If they're not, then you don't need to, and they can go to the subsidy. They can go to the federal exchange and get a subsidy, and you're not on the hook for it because they were not eligible for your plan. That's basically written what I've told you, but you can use these slides as you look through this later on. And we also need, if we have a new hire that is determined a full-time status, we need to make sure that they are transitioned into the measurement period for the full-time employees as a regular employee. So you need to make sure that you measure them. They'll turn into an employee instead of a new hire. So make sure that you continue measuring them also. Well, the second paragraph, a large employer would be subject to a penalty if any full-time employee, as determined over 30 hours a week to receive a premium tax credit, then the large employer is going to be fined. So we need to make sure that we offer coverage to our employees. If we offer minimal essential coverage and affordable, then we cannot be fined. So that's the key. So we've talked about the measurement periods already. So if an employee averages over 30 hours per week during that measurement period, then the employee is considered full-time and needs to be offered coverage during that stability period, even though they go back to a part-time status. So employers may use different look-back and stability periods for different categories of employees. I strongly suggest you don't do that you don't discriminate, that you keep everybody the same. It will make your life a lot easier, and your hair won't get as gray as it would if you weren't. I'm going through these reasonably quick because I want to leave some time for questions and answers. So this is just definitions again, and again, what you determine. Again, I think that initial measurement period and standard measurement period should be 12 months. It's going to make it easier for you instead of a shorter period of 3 months. Okay, and this is the pay or play penalty that I had talked about, that if we determine, or if we don't do anything and we don't look at our variable employees, but if the IRS says that this employee should have been offered benefits and they go into the exchange and get a subsidy, then you're going to be fined. And that's the last thing I want any of our restaurants to be fined. So please pay attention to this because it is important. Who's considered an employee? Lots of debate on this, but basically anybody that gets a W-2 is an employee. And there's no wiggle room on that. Full-time employee, that's what we were talking about, an average of 30 hours per week of service. And these are a couple slides that I took from different sources. Some are saying the same thing, so I'm not going to go through this. But again, these slides talking about how you determine between a full-time employee and a part-time employee when they're variable hour. And again, seasonal employee and part-time employee also. Okay, I'm 1 minute over. Good
job.
So I think we've probably got. Do we have some questions, Carol?
Well, we have one, and I have written a few down myself. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, and we will get to your questions if we possibly can. We are going to try to end this right on the hour, and if we have extra questions, we will get them back to you in writing. A couple of housekeeping things. We talked about the PowerPoint. Anybody that's on this webinar or signed up for this webinar will get the PowerPoint slides and the IRS email. We'll email those to you. The webinar will be uploaded to our website if you want anybody else in your organization to watch the webinar. Can you read that question there?
Does the employer have to provide anything on that the employees that they have coverage elsewhere and have waived coverage through the employer? Yes. I would recommend that. A lot of our carriers have been loosey-goosey on the waiver form, but I would recommend that all full-time employees over 30 hours a week, that you get them to enroll on the plan or that you get them to waive off. So make sure that they have a waiver form signed and put that in their personnel file, that you have other stuff in their personnel file, but put that in there along with their beneficiary or their life insurance or whatever else you have in that file. But what you need to make sure, if you're a large employer, you need to make sure that you offer all your full-time employees minimal essential coverage, and you also make sure that they are affordable, less than 9.5%. Now, for all employees under 50 lives, including Linton Associates and including New Mexico Restaurant Association, if you have less than 50 lives, you're not required to offer health insurance to your employees. Now, a lot of our employers do that, like Linton does and Restaurant Association does, because we're good employers and we want to offer benefits. But if you're under 50 employees, the ACA is irrelevant to you. So if you don't offer coverage, then your employees can go into the website or go into the exchange and get a subsidy, and you're not fined for it or anything.
So I have a question on that. In one of your first slides, and I was a little confused, it said small groups in 2016 will be considered 100 lives. Give me that again, because I didn't quite understand.
So beginning in 2016, our large group is going to be 50 lives. As far as
50 to 100?
50 and above.
Oh,
50
sure. Okay.
And above. But what that slide meant was that our small groups are being rated as New Mexico Restaurant Association and Linton Associates. We're rated on an age basis. So a person that's 22 years old is less expensive than a person that's 40 years old that's less expensive than a 60-year-old. So right now, today, May 19th, all groups under 50 are what we call age-rated. Groups 50 and over are what we call community-rated, so it doesn't matter how old you are, it's the same rate because the carriers give an average age of what your group is, and that's what the rate is. So for next year, we're going to get individually rated. Our groups from 50 to 100 will be individually rated. So if I'm a 60-person group now, I could have a composite rate or a community rate, and then next year's renewal, the 60-year-old is going to be a lot more expensive. The 25-year-old is going to be a lot less expensive. So I try to let our groups in that 50 to 100 know that there's going to be a complete change in rating methodology for 2016.
So that's more about rates. It's not about how we determine our workforce.
That's correct.
So on that determining the workforce, I know a lot of restaurants have gone to determining that, okay, now the IRS for years and years, 40 hours was when you had to deal with overtime, and therefore we kept people under 40 hours. That was a full-time employee, and therefore we were keeping people just under that because we, for the most part, don't pay overtime, and when we have to, we do. But same thing is happening now with the Affordable Care Act. This determination of 30 hours as full-time is making us redefine our workforce. For those of you who don't know, the National Restaurant Association and the New Mexico Restaurant Association are working very hard with our Congress to try to change that 30-hour definition.
Back up to 40.
Back up to 40, and we did get it passed by both the House and the Senate. The president did veto that, and so we're trying to get a supermajority to pass that. We've talked to some of our Congress folks and met with mixed, and I'm getting political because you can't, Terry, but they met with mixed feelings on that. But we are, our employees, some of them do want the 40 hours. Many of them are part-time and they're happy with that. But now that full-time is being determined as 30 hours a week or less, or more, we're keeping a lot of our employees at that 30 hours. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, but you need to do this as a business decision. Do not drop your employee from 36 hours down to 28 hours because of ACA. That's a red flag, and you'll get fined for that. But it's a business decision that your employee went from 36 hours to 26 hours or 28 hours. So it cannot be mandated by the ACA law. That's a red flag that.
So you wouldn't take somebody that was already making 40 hours and drop them down to below 30. But if somebody new comes in, you can tell them, I am offering you, 28 hours or less, and you're perfectly okay doing that.
Right.
Okay.
Just be careful when you recategorize those people that are in the 30 to 40 hours now, and you drop them down. It has to be a business decision.
All right. Well, it's a business decision for sure.
But it can't be mandated by ACA.
Interesting. Okay. And then you talked about the HRAs being gone. Is that the same as the FSAs?
No, they're completely different. I try to confuse people with all those terms. HRA is health reimbursement account.
And that's an employer account, correct?
It's an employer account, and there's a couple different HRA mechanisms. One is that they use it to pay for the individual premiums, and that's what's been disallowed. What is still allowed is if an employer has a bronze plan with a $3,000 deductible, and they tell the employees by contract that if you accrue money toward that $3,000 deductible, we'll pay half of that money. We'll reimburse you back. So that's a health reimbursement account. Okay. So that's still good, but what isn't good is the employers paying for individual premiums on a before tax basis.
Okay, so what about if I'm allowing my employees to hold back their funds in a pre-tax fund called an FSA, right?
That would be an FSA. That is fine.
And those are still going to be good. Okay.
Right. FSA is flexible spending account or cafeteria plan or flexible benefits. And those are fine. That they have not been the only thing that they've done, the Congress has done with that is with you can only have a maximum limit of $2,500 on for the FSA account or the cafeteria plan account.
So if anybody has questions, please do type that into the chat box and we'll be happy to answer any questions. I am, I think this is just, it's overwhelming for so many folks. And I actually don't know on the line how many of the businesses we have that are over 50. If you could type in just really quickly, if you're over 50 or if you're under 50 employees, or if you've even determined that. One thing I will tell you is that you're not alone in this, and you don't have to be alone. Linton and Associates are here to help our members and to help you, make your way through this Shark Tank, because it really is. And the reporting, the IRS reporting, is going to be very critical next year. You need to have that done correctly. They're probably not going to give us too much leeway on having that done correctly, because they've given us some extra time to get it done. So please let us know if you're in a situation where you need some help. Terry is absolutely, their group there is absolutely great at answering questions and would be happy to do that for you. And they also sell insurance. So I'm just going to put that plug in there. They also do property and casualty insurance, but we use them for our health insurance and have used them for many years now. So here's another question. What is the estimated cost per full-time employer or employee for an employer of over 50?
Okay. I'm thinking the estimated cost for health insurance, groups under 50 are what we call book rates, because health is not an issue. All we need to know is what a person's age is, and we know what the premium is for the bronze plan, the gold plan, the platinum plan, depending on the carrier. On groups over 50, those are what we call in our industry underwritten. So then we have to get some health histories, whether it be from the carrier or from a form that all the employees fill out to get a rate. So I can't say that a large group is going to be less expensive than a small group or vice versa. It all depends. Small groups, we know. Small group meaning under 50, we know that what those rates are going to be because those are regulated by state law. But our large group, there's a lot of variables involved with that, so I can't tell you what the rates are going to be.
Are the large groups usually less expensive than the small groups?
It depends. If we have a large group with a bunch of 50-year-olds and a small group with a bunch of 30-year-olds, the large group's going to be more expensive.
There's such a danger in discrimination in that they are not thinking these things through, but that's what we said.
Well, and
you said right. They had to write it before they read it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And for instance, our small employer, we know that a 22-year-old is going to be less expensive than a 42-year-old. It's going to be less expensive than a 52-year-old. So you have two employees that are looking for, or two prospective employees, and you as decision maker, and they're both qualified, you're going to go with the younger person because it's going to be less expensive on health insurance.
Wow.
Now that's really simplified, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, you're making a business decision there, and all of a sudden it becomes an expensive business decision. We have another question.
Okay, so we've got, as of this month, we are over 50 employees. Because we only surpass this number, do we have a stability period? And so how long? I would be more than happy to talk to you about this because you're probably you're in the transition period right now, over 50 employees, the transition zone for 2015, but you might talk to your employee benefits broker or give me a holler, and I'd be more than happy to walk this through with you. I don't want to use your name or anything, but you know who you are.
Well, and that is it. There's only so much of this you need to do on your own. You should really get somebody that knows what they're doing and has been through this with other employers.
I would advise you to talk to a professional on this, because you're going to need to do some reporting, and you might be in a transition period for this year, but we would have to take a look at that.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions, and I really want to say I appreciate you being here, Terry, and answering these questions and going through this slide deck with our members. We will put this up on our website, and it will be available to our members. If you need help with insurance, health insurance, property and casualty, Linton Associates, their phone number is right here, 505-247-1530, and you can email Terry directly at terry@lintonassociates.com. If you have questions for the Restaurant Association, you can always contact me, Carol, at nmrestaurants.org, and we're always here for you. We appreciate you being here.